John Decker, our own White House correspondent. John was at that White House Correspondents' Dinner Saturday night with the assassination attempt. He'll be joining us talking about the King's visit and a lot more. Let me start with the basics, though. Good morning. We have another nice one today. In fact, yesterday and today is kind of the picks of the week. Might get some rain moving in Thursday. But today, J-Dog, we're looking pretty good. Another warmer day and some sun. And thank you for joining us. Regionally now, more stations up into Maine on the FM side and Lakes region, Manchester, Concord. Good morning, New Hampshire. Good morning, Maine. Good morning, New England. Good morning, worldwide. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google. Play the Pulse of an H. And our poll question up on X at the Pulse of an H. J-Doc and I wanted to maybe ask you about the Bruins game. Will they force an extension of their season against Buffalo? But we're going to go with that Jimmy Kimmel ABC flap. Here we go again, round two. The Trump's not happy with the late night entertainer. Has he gone too far on his humor about the first lady being an expecting widow? Yes or no? And Jimmy Kimmel's he gone too far once again? I just don't know why he doesn't put his name on a ballot, but obviously doesn't have the guts to do that. We'll come back to that. And we got a packed show for you this morning. I mentioned John Decker will be joining us, and he was there that Saturday night. But we're going to start with newsmaker Governor Kelly Ayotte joining us live out of the gate on a nice Tuesday morning. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning, Jack. Great to be with you.
Well, thank you. Let's talk about something that is not in season right now. We've closed the ski areas. We had a banner season, but you're, I guess, calling for an investigation into what they call, it could be a blended sales tax, kind of a hidden sales tax charged by Vail Resorts at our ski areas. Take it away, Governor.
Well, apparently, this out-of-state company, Vail, is going to charge people in New Hampshire sales tax, which we don't have a sales tax, Jack. So I asked the Attorney General to investigate this because we're not going to allow anyone to charge a sales tax here in New Hampshire. And you should be able to ski free here without the sales tax. It's who we are, and we certainly shouldn't be paying for the bad decisions of other states on the sales tax.
So as I understand it, they operate, I think, Attitash, Wildcat, Crotched, and I guess Mount Sunapee through that lease arrangement.
Right, and Sunapee.
Yep. But they're talking about a 3.2% sales, a blended sales tax on multi-resort epic passes across the country, which obviously would include New Hampshire. And you're saying no?
No, I mean, we don't have a sales tax. Our law here is no sales tax, so they cannot impose a sales tax on the people of New Hampshire. We're not going to allow that. And, people are going to be able to ski here, sales tax free. And so we're going to fight them on this because, of course, that's the New Hampshire advantage. No income tax, no sales tax. And we're not going to let an out-of-state company try to sneak one in.
So do you think New Hampshire and the governor can defeat Vail Resorts on this? You're asking for an investigation? What's that?
Hey, it's our law. Hey, you want to do business in New Hampshire? We don't have sales taxes. Like, you'd think that people would embrace that.
Have you heard anything? Has your office talked to anyone at Vail on the business side to see if I'm sure they're seeing the news on this. They can't miss it.
Yeah, I mean, they're reaching out to us, but I mean, the answer is drop the sales tax.
All right.
If you're going to be people in New Hampshire, come on, this is who we are.
Okay. Governor, let me switch gears. Speaking of taxes, I guess right now, your chief opponent on the Democrat side, I guess, would be Cindy Warmington, correct? Former executive counsel. She ran last time when Joyce Craig defeated her and you defeated Craig. She's been on the Democrat side, and I'm hearing from analysts on my show that they're pretty much focusing on the U.S. Senate matchup and sort of writing off that she's going to be the nominee. She in the past has been criticized by, I think, a lot of folks on her involvement. I guess, I don't know if it's called, lobbying or advocating for the opioid, industry during the crisis. But you mentioned taxes, and taxes have become kind of interesting. When I have state senators, Republicans on my show last week, they keep saying Democrats, if they had their way, they would pass an income tax. Andrew Walensky, former, he's not a candidate now, he's not in the state house, but he proposed this, statewide income tax in New Hampshire. Do you think Cindy Warmington, if she were, gets the nomination, would she veto an income or sales tax if elected? Do you think
you can't trust Cindy Warmington on taxes? Are you kidding me? She certainly is someone who I believe would support taxes. And she, she has certainly her whole plans. If you look at her plans, even on things like energy, I mean, she's going to drive up energy costs. She's going to make it less affordable for people in New Hampshire. But Jack, she's got a fundamental problem. You raised it. It's really a core problem in terms of her qualifications. She was an opioid lobbyist, and she testified before our legislature as an opioid lobbyist that OxyContin is a miracle drug with very few side effects. I mean, come on. Do you know how many people have died in New Hampshire from opioids? I mean, it's unbelievable to me. And, she tries to claim like, oh, I didn't know at the time, which of course is not true either, because on the very same hearing that she testified it was a miracle drug, you had people like the head of HHS and state police saying, hey, it's a highly addictive drug. And it's in a form that's abusable, that people are committing robberies at the time to get the drug. So she's got a lot of questions to answer, and I don't even know how she sleeps at night as a result of this.
All right, Governor, let me switch gears. Again, when I have some of my View to the Senate regular guests on State Senate, Senator Innes last week, I think, or the week before, but more talk about a bill to increase New Hampshire Turnpike tolls for non-residents. So if you don't have the local Easy Pass, I guess the bill would increase toll booth rates. I guess from $1 or $2, for example, toll plazas in Bedford and Hooksett and other places in Hampton. So I guess the question is, it seems to be popular in the Senate. I don't know about the House. You know about this more than me, but let's just presume it passed the bill to raise toll booth rates and hikes for out-of-state drivers. Say it passed the House and Senate, and it hit your desk. Would you sign that or veto that?
No, I'm not signing that. And, I was very clear on this a long time ago, like months ago, that I wasn't going to support a toll hike. And, I understand that the legislature is off doing it, but my answer is going to be no. So, but it's not like they're surprised about this, because families right now, we're not going to make New Hampshire less affordable. How's that? So I'm not supporting a toll hike.
One other question in a very general sense. We know it's international in the war in Iran. I have a lot of interviews today. We're going to see if the blockade works, trying to get an agreement to end this war. But the point is it's continuing. And obviously that's on the minds of a lot of people. But here locally, do you think overall, Governor Abbott, this is the cost of this? And of course, we've seen the rise in gas and other things. Is the situation in the Middle East, Strait of Hormuz, the war with Iran, is it starting to be a drag, do you think, and I'm talking locally, on the economy here, whether it's on home sales, revenues into the state government, people making, consumer choices? Obviously, it's more expensive to fill up the vehicle now. Do you think it's starting to be a drag on the home front economically?
Well, Jack, as you know, my focus is here in New Hampshire, and when I think about what's happening over there, we do have men and women who are deployed. So I just make sure that they're supported. I appreciate their service to the nation and what they're doing to keep us safe. So that's really my focus, of making sure that they have what they need. And when it comes to the war against Iran, and here at home, I've been fighting to keep energy costs down. That's why I made sure that we had a new leader of the PUC, because I didn't think they were focused enough on affordability. Also on, fighting to reduce costs. I've been pushing ISO New England on that to reduce costs for transmission, more nuclear. So I'm going to do everything we can here in New Hampshire within my control and things that I can have an impact on to make sure that we make things as affordable as possible in New Hampshire, because this is the best place, obviously, to raise a family and do business, especially in the region, but I think even nationally. And that's really my focus.
You mentioned, I remind folks, and I know your husband was a pilot in the Middle East and a veteran, and also one of your kids, I believe, is serving. But I point out, yeah. I think people forget, Governor Ayotte, that we have a lot of people deployed right now, and
we can't forget that, Jack.
Yeah.
We just,
but you look at
not only Air Guard, but we have Army Guard. So in terms of Charlie company, not necessarily deployed there, but,
Well,
deployed. So I just, it's important that we support our men and women in uniform.
yeah, and you mentioned the refuelers, and they've been active for quite a while in this mission. And I think people forget sometimes. I know you don't because you've done this, but
I
they,
don't.
they,
And,
but the
my role,
spouses,
obviously,
their spouses and
as
kids,
governor.
yeah, their spouses and kids are still here when they're deployed, going to school and living. And people forget that when we have so many people serving, we should remember that.
I hope we don't forget that. And I hope we, support them. As you know, Jack, less than 1% of the nation defends the rest of us. And they deserve our full support, and their families deserve anything we can do to support them when they're deployed. So that's really been my focus as governor on this conflict.
Yeah, and then the last thing is 2 weeks from tomorrow, we go 12 hours again for my 12th annual Make 12 Hours Count for Veterans Count. And I hope we can get you to kick off the morning officially.
Oh yeah, I got to get over there for that. That's always an awesome event, and I really appreciate your support for that. You do a fantastic job, so supportive of our veterans.
All right, thank you, Governor Kelly, for the time. Taking on Vail. Wow, thank you.
Oh yeah, let's go. See ya.
All right. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. We're looking at a nice looking Tuesday coming up. John Decker was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He was covering it, and we haven't had him on since, and he's going to give us an update. Also, King Charles, officially at the White House. I don't know if you caught this. There was a lip reader that when the president and first lady do that official on the red carpet greeting and they say a few words, that lip readers can look at this video and stop it with digital and say, okay, this is what they were able to actually. I don't know if it's true or not. One of the British tabloids, British media outlets, same thing, right? Same thing. Was doing a bit when they were able to pick up King Charles and the president talking about Saturday night and then talking about Putin and meeting with the Iranian foreign minister. So I guess you got to be careful. But speaking of that, Jimmy Kimmel, ABC, here we go again. Did he go too far? That's our poll question up on X. A reminder, in the first hour, we're coming to you on YouTube, streaming at the Pulse of an H. Jack Heath. We come back on a nice looking Tuesday. A lot coming up. Stay here.
The Fed Point make to Jack on the pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, we are back. Coming up, John Decker, our own White House correspondent, and he was at that. He's going to talk about the mood in Washington, King Charles visit, and a whole lot more. Latest on the war with and in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz mess, and we'll see where it goes. But welcome back. Nice looking day today, warmer too, temperature wise. I wanted to take a moment on the latest in what we're doing to try and end this war and get an agreement with the Iranian, whoever the authorities are, because it's hard to know who's calling the shots. I mean, the foreign minister of Iran going to meet with Vladimir Putin because they've always been cozy, Moscow and Tehran. And I don't really care what the Russian president, has to say on any thoughts on this because he's got his hands full with Ukraine, I think. But it's hard to know who, as Secretary of State Marco Rubio said correctly yesterday, it's hard to know who we're negotiating with. The president has called it fractured leadership. It's certainly disjointed, and it seems like there's a real rift between the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the military, the hardliners, maybe even the clerics or the politicians, which would include the foreign minister who was meeting with Putin, the president. We actually have a president over there, which is symbolic. And then, of course, the head of their parliament. So it seems there's a rift. Not seems, there is. So what is the blockade? The bottom line is the blockade, the U.S. blockade, the president is now convinced is working better than bombs. Is the blockade going to work? And how do you define work? Is it going to force an agreement with the Iranians that we want? That's the bottom line here. Let's just cut to the chase and cut the BS. Is it going to force an agreement that we want and need to wind this thing down, focus on lowering cost, including oil and gas and everything else, and get back to some basics, or not? Is it going to work? Now, right now, it seems to be having some significant impacts because you choke off the money and the daily money from oil, and you close off the Iranian harbor and ports, and it chokes them pretty strongly, even the Islamic terrorist side, where they want money and they want their oil flowing. So obviously you're hitting the Achilles heel, the let's just say the sciatic nerve of the Iranian power structure. You're hitting the nerve hard, and you're pressing that nerve. But is it enough to make them cave enough to say, okay, we'll let you control the uranium, no nuclear ambitions for a bomb, and the Strait of Hormuz opens? Is it enough? And I think the president and his team feels it is. And it may well be, because the backstory I'm starting to hear, and I'll share it with you, from the quote unquote more intelligent side of life, those who do this thing from an analysis point of view that I've been blessed to know over the years, and I talked about background. I think the back channel story that they're hearing, and I can't explain it 100%, but you'll get it, is the oil wells the Iranians control. And the oil wells have to keep pumping oil. Let me just cut to the chase here. They have to keep pumping oil. And if they're pumping oil, they're working. And if they back up and they can't pump, then they have to shut down their oil wells. And that can take a long time. That can actually destroy them, or it's not like you just turn them on again. So the oil is pumping, but the blockade is stifling the pumping. And if it backs up enough, like water in a pipe, if they can't pump that oil, then they're out of business. And if Iran's out of the oil business, they're out of business. They're out of business, period. And it's about the money and oil, folks. I said this now for weeks. Money and oil makes the world go around, at least in the Middle East. So the bottom line is that our chief strategy right now? And I think it is. Cut off the oil, cut off the money, and it screws up their production. And, of course, China's sitting there waiting for their exports, and it just really screws up a lot of things for them financially, and their oil basically puts them out of business, puts the Iranians out of business. Now, the problem is, one thing I would hope they don't do is, you worry about could they put the oil on tankers and keep them in their ports? How do you, could they dump it? Could they get rid of it another way? But that's what I think the strategy is. That's the only thing I can see at this point. And the president seems sold on it. But I'm going to remind you something that our retired fighter pilot from New Hampshire, who's been such a really premier military analyst on my show, Tim Hafner, said a few weeks ago, or a week ago, I think it was a week ago. He said, even though you've cut back and you're hurting them and pressing them against the wall, you can take pretty much 95% of their teeth and muscle away, but they're a terrorist regime and they're the enemy and they have a vote and they can veto what you want. In other words, even though you've done this and they're down to the smaller Iranian, Navy boats with a mounted gun like one of our, smaller Coast Guard or Navy boats, they're still able to cause disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. You've heard about the mines. They still have a vote in this. In other words, they still can be that they're not going to do what you want. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's what Tim Hafner, our military expert, said. The enemy always has a vote in the plan. It may not go their way, but they're not going to vote your way. They're not going to do what you want because of who they are. And that's a problem here. So you can literally cut off their oil, literally put them out of business, take their money, and then see what they do. But at some point here, I'm still concerned about the uranium, and I don't know why. If Israel knows where it is and we know where it is, why don't we just go secure it? That might be something we should do anyway, but that's just me. Because I thought that's what this whole thing was about. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. We had Governor Kelly Ayotte on earlier making some news about this blended tax at Vail Resorts that operates 4 ski areas, pretty good major ski areas here in New Hampshire. The Vail Resorts plans on putting in a 3.2% blended sales tax on their multi-resort Epic passes that people here in New Hampshire would presumably buy because they oversee Wildcat, Attitash, Crotched Mountain, and Mount Sunapee. But as Governor Kelly Ayotte said, we don't have a sales tax here, so they're not going to do that here, and she's going to do an investigation and talk with them, but you're not going to do a 3.2% sales tax here, so we'll see how that plays out. I also asked the governor about, are we seeing a drain or drag on the local economy here, right here at home, because of the war with in Iran, and she's saying she can only focus on what she can do locally. She also took some pretty strong verbal shots this morning at her Democrat challenger, presumably who will be the nominee, Cindy Warmington, earlier in the show. We'll have that interview for you up on demand at the Pulse of an H. But coming up, John Decker, our own White House correspondent. Brad Card will weigh in as well. And we have a great podcast for you today at the Pulse of an H coming up. Contact Politics, Brad Card, yours truly. And Brad has lined up. Brad has lined up a great guest, one of the former main members of the Secret Service, U.S. Secret Service, talking about security concerns and threats. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment.
This is the Pulse. From the New England College Studios, home to a new media center where the next generation of journalists are taught to do it right. Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, Brad Carr joining us, co-host of Contact Politics. We got a super new podcast this afternoon, very timely. And also John Decker, our White House correspondent, is going to be joining us. And I want to hear his thoughts from Saturday night's White House Correspondents' Dinner. And, of course, maybe even Jimmy Kimmel and the whole ABC flap. Is he over the line again with his so-called humor? Do you want to bring in Brad? And here's John. John, we're going to bring in John, and Brad can listen in and ask a question as well. And we'll get to Brad on a bunch of stuff, plus our podcast. So, John Decker, our White House correspondent. John, very busy week. Everything from the Fed. You there, John?
I am here. Absolutely. Yes.
We got a royal visit, the king. We got Federal Reserve meeting, legislative stuff. But I want to go back to Saturday night, the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Were you in attendance?
Oh, I was. I was in close proximity to where all of that happened. That was my 30th dinner, Jack. Pretty memorable, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I want to know how you're.
Yeah. I mean, say again.
I want to know how your human reaction to all that. It was just so real.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You know, it was surreal. And so, you know, for me, our table was towards the back of the ballroom in the center. So when I heard those shots, it was so loud to me. You know, it was pop, 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 5 shots. And the only question for me was, were the shots coming from inside the ballroom? You know, and my eyes immediately then focused on the head table to see if the president was okay, and then if anybody was okay. And there was a wave in terms of people essentially taking cover under their tables. So that was one of the things that I noticed right away after I heard those shots.
Wow. Brad Card with us as well, real quickly. The busy week, obviously, King Charles, the Federal Reserve, and a lot more, and of course the Middle East and a blockade.
Yeah, a lot on the president's schedule today. It's all about King Charles, though. You know, in just about an hour's time, he'll have that welcoming ceremony for King Charles and Queen Camilla on the South Lawn at the White House. They'll have a bilateral meeting with King Charles in the Oval Office. King Charles, in the afternoon, will address a joint session of Congress. That's pretty historic. Last time that's happened was 35 years ago with Queen Elizabeth II. And then the president and the first lady will host a state dinner tonight in their honor, and that will happen in the East Room at the White House. So the president's been looking forward to this day for quite some time. So the only damper on it is just that there's a little bit of rain that's come out just in the past half hour or so.
Well, plus Congress, the message from the king, even though he's symbolic and not, like a prime minister, things are not hunky-dory between us and the prime minister or the government right now.
I think they're not, Jack. You're right about that, 100%. And so I think one of the themes you're going to hear throughout the day, not only in the king's speech that he'll deliver at the welcoming ceremony, but in his address to Congress, and also in the toast that he delivers this evening, is about why it's important that the United States and the United Kingdom always have a strong relationship with each other. That's a theme that they've stressed upon, arriving here in America, and it's a theme that I think will be stressed during the state dinner as well.
John Decker, thank you.
Thanks,
Jack.
Jack. Have a good one.
Go ahead, Brad.
So John Decker on the podcast, and he gave a really good commentary about the shooting, about the shots that were fired at the Correspondents' Dinner. The Briefing Room is the name of his podcast, and I'll tell you, it's pretty good. It's really good, actually.
I don't want to forget our podcast this afternoon, so why don't you take a moment and tell us about our guest that you lined up, and you know these folks well, and I think they did a pretty darn good job, despite, someone said, well, it was kind of chaotic. I go, do you think an assassination attempt is ever not chaotic? But, Brad, tell us about our guest this afternoon for Contact Politics.
Well, Chuck Morin's his name. Charles Morin, former Secret Service, one of the top guys at the Department of Homeland Security when Janet Napolitano was there. He's a national security expert. You can hear him. You've probably seen him and you've heard him on television. He's on a lot of different cable stations commenting on national security issues. And I wanted to have him on, and I know you wanted to have him on for kind of the same reason, is that people are so critical of the Secret Service and, the Monday morning quarterbacking after these incidents. I thought Secret Service did an exceptionally good job. When you have the room full of dignitaries that they had at that dinner, and each security detail team has their own responsibilities. And, the vice president was taken out, and there are people saying, well, why did the vice president go out before the president? And each team is different, and the vice president walked himself off the stage quickly. I think Secret Service did a great job. So I'm really interested to have a top Secret Service agent talk to us about what goes into it. These are real carefully planned events.
Oh, yeah.
This is the same type of security that they have at the inauguration. And they always do an after action report.
Right.
So they'll come back and they'll dissect everything that they did.
Mm-hmm.
But kudos to the current Secret Service right now, who did a great job, in my opinion, for that. And we'll hear from Chuck Morin about it.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. And, this is the third assassination attempt on this president. I mean, obviously the guy was there to start at the top. I mean, he wanted to assassinate the president, as many people as he could in there. And I think the Secret Service did a phenomenal job. Plus, the guy was in court yesterday. And what a dramatic picture with one of the agents standing in front of the president, and that's what they're paid to do. But Brad, third attempt, and that's, you look at history. That's kind of interesting. Let's switch gears though. A lot going on, Brad. I mean, we talk about Congress, we talk about the King's visit. Let's talk about King Charles. Will be addressing Congress this afternoon. Paint that picture for us.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I think Republicans in Congress are somewhat torn. They're torn on NATO, and they're torn on the response that Great Britain is providing, and the support that Great Britain is providing in our war in Iran, and what's going on in the Straits of Hormuz. So, look, I think this is a big deal. And I would also say, Jack, it's coming at a pretty important time for Congress. They're out in recess next week. We're at day 73, I believe it is of the Department of Homeland Security shutdown. Still don't have that resolved.
No one's talking about
it. The Senate passed their provisions through reconciliation. The House has to act and get this thing done. But they're also talking about Pfizer extension, and that blew off last night in the Rules Committee. So it doesn't look like they're going to be able to get that done today. And they have huge problems with the Farm Bill. So it's looking very dysfunctional right now, and there's a lot to be done. And Congress kind of has to get its act together and get this passed. You have a bunch of ideologues right now who are playing games. And at the end of the day, Congress has to function, and they also have to realize it's a very slim majority. So compromise is necessary.
And getting
if you
slimmer,
can't compromise, what are you doing?
And it's getting slimmer by the month, it seems. Speaking of that, you mentioned the majority or slim. Midterms. We just had Governor Kelly out live in the show, Brad, here in New Hampshire to kick off the show on some subjects and topics. But it just seems that let's just go to the U.S. Senate race. It's one of the bigger ones in the country because Jeanne Shaheen, of course, not running again. So you have Chris Pappas and Democrats, but he's leading that race for the primary. John E. Sununu leading in that UNH poll and fundraising over Scott Brown, and there'll be others. But the point is, it's just the congressional stuff. The first district, Brad, is crowded. Republicans running, some big names there. Holly Noveletsky's run before, Anthony DiLorenzo and others. And then you got Stephanie Shaheen running as a Democrat, Maura Sullivan, some big names. Seconded. It's just quiet here. What about other states, Brad? Are these primaries? When do you think they're going to really heat up? May, Memorial Day? When is this thing going to really heat up? June?
Well, some of the primaries are already fully heated up because the primaries are coming up pretty quickly. Like, for instance, Ohio has a May 5th primary, but New Hampshire has a very late primary, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. One, it lets parties pick their strongest nominee, but two, it's so late that it's hard to come back to the middle. And I talk about this all the time.
Yep. You mean you got to pivot?
And I'm a broken record on it. You can't win in New Hampshire if you can't attract independent voters, because neither party is big enough if you're going to rely strictly on Republican votes or strictly on Democrat votes. You've got to reach out to independent voters. And it's deeply troubling to me. I mean, the Trump administration ran a very partisan race and lost in New Hampshire, right? I just think that this is something that is it's tough on candidates because you got to get through these primaries, and primary voters tend to swing to their further sides, right? Republicans go right, Democrats go left.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of who they pander to.
Right.
It does not bode well for general elections, though.
Yeah, interesting. All right, Pat, a lot of stuff. Looking forward to the podcast. J-Dog will have it on this afternoon. The Secret Service looking at the agency and the life. Maybe we can get a little human with it, too. I mean, it is an unusual profession, and you got a great guest, so we'll let you lead the way, but a great subject. Thank you, Brad Card. We'll talk to you in a bit. When we come back, Dean Spiliota, Southern New Hampshire University, will check in. Federal Reserve meeting this week, so by Thursday, with all the uncertainty, this is where the economy, a lot of it's indirect, a lot of it's very subtle. Federal Reserve not likely to lower that bank-to-bank rate, which affects the rate for us on things like mortgages and other payments, or what we're paying to borrow and spend money. They're likely to not lower it because of uncertainty, and maybe I'm wrong, but we have a lot going on. Top of the 10 o'clock, we'll be getting an update on all the news happening. A great editor from a national outlet is going to talk to us. We'll even get his take on the Jimmy Kimmel flap, and I won't even dignify this. I don't watch him. I don't watch any of the late night stuff anymore. Gone are the days of a Johnny Carson or even a Jay Leno. Or I would even say a David Letterman. When things were funny. Let me repeat that. When late night entertainers were funny and not political. Johnny Carson was asked once by, I don't know if it was Maurice Safo or one of the 60 Minutes folks, how come you never go there? And he said, the way, Johnny Carson, who got the whole thing going, why don't you ever go there on the big stuff, the political stuff? And Johnny Carson says, that's not what they want from me. That's not what I do. I don't want to do. I'm supposed to bring distraction and laughs into their living rooms and bedrooms at night, not stress. They get enough of that during the day. And I don't know why the late night folks just can't get that through their thick heads. And sometimes it's very thick. And if they're that fixated on politics, like some musicians in our country, why don't they put their names on a ballot and run for office? It's free and open country. You can do that. You can actually put your name on a ballot. I did once. You can actually put your name on a ballot and run for office, tell people what you think, put your name on the line instead of hiding behind your network and taking shots at families like the first family or the first lady, who I think took offense for good reason. It's not funny talking about an assassination attempt. It wasn't funny with the Charlie Kirk story either, Jimmy. So put your name on a ballot. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think you have the guts to do that, do you? Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment.
News, information. Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, welcome back. Got a lot going on, and I believe we have Dean Spiliotis to talk about some of the events of the day. Everything from a royal visit with the king, going to be addressing Congress this afternoon. Had the governor on to kick off the show this morning. Governor Kelly Ayotte, Dean Spiliotis, Southern New Hampshire University, one of our great partners and sponsors, political science professor. Had the governor on this morning making some news. Good morning, Dean.
Hey, good morning, Jack.
You want to start big or start local?
Whatever you like.
No, what do you think?
Well, I mean, there's been so much going on nationally between the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and the latest offer from Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, although provided that the U.S. lifts the blockade. Although we don't actually know exactly what the opening would look like, but no mention of nuclear material, and that has been whenever Republicans are pressed on the war, they always say that it's important that Iran never have a nuclear weapon. So I'm a little skeptical that this is going to make any progress. It's starting to feel like we're settling in for a bit of a stalemate here.
And I talked to two people before the show this morning, Dean. I think that's problematic. And I maybe I look at this stuff a little more. Well, you're in the academic world. I try and be academic about this and smart. I'm convinced now. I may be wrong, but I think history will prove this over time. I think the president and our team thought this would be a quicker endeavor. Bomb them, they'll fold quickly. Not happening. Complicated, and not just the Iranian, but the Strait of Hormuz. And I think it's going much longer. And then you go on the slippery slope of a protracted, prolonged war. I mean, just look at Putin with Ukraine. I think the Russian president thought that would be quick as well. How long is that going on? But the drag on the economy, I asked Governor Kelly Ayotte, is this starting to drag on the local economy? And of course, she said she can only focus on what she can do, but we know it is, not just on gas and energy prices. So we got to figure it out quickly. And I think the uranium is the only thing we can control. Let's just go get it, secure it with Israel. Let's secure it. I don't know if we can straighten out the unstrait of Hormuz, if you know what I mean. It's very complicated. The only strategy we seem to be doing is the blockade cuts off money and oil and will mess up their oil production. And we think that's going to break their back, because if they have no money and oil, they don't have anything. But I don't know how long that's going to take.
Right. I mean, the gamble has been that the calculation has been that Iran won't be able to sustain the economic damage for an extended period of time. You hear a lot of reporting about all the oil they have ready to go and nowhere to send it. So I think the U.S. is hoping that they'll at some point be forced to come to the table. But I hear a lot of people saying, well, Iran needs to let the strait go back to the way it was before, with the international. The rules of international waters, and I can't see them giving up this newfound leverage that they've discovered. I think they're going to try to hang on to some piece of it, and the nuclear material. It kind of seems to sort of ebb and flow from sort of the key issue in all of this, and I think that's problematic as well. And I think you're right, Jack. I think President Trump, saw the tactical brilliance of the U.S. military, both with the bombing last summer and now with the quick extraction of Maduro from Venezuela, and figured it would be the same thing with Iran. We'd decapitate their leadership, and they would be demoralized and quickly cave. And it's just kind of a misreading of their history.
Right. And a terrorist regime, they're not going to cave. They're going to go to the end. Right. And they don't care about people starving or running out of money. And that's a problem. We should have probably learned that in Afghanistan and Iraq, but that's another story. So it's going to be interesting. And I don't know how long, it goes or can go, but it's almost getting, gets more convoluted the longer it goes. Let's switch gears. King Charles addressing Congress this afternoon. Paint that picture. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, there'll be a lot of interest paid to this. We know that the relationship between Prime Minister Keir Starmer and President Trump has been strained. It got off to a good start with that visit a while back when Starmer said that Trump would get a second royal visit, and that was unheard of. He really kind of seemed to ingratiate himself with President Trump, but the response to to Iran has disappointed Trump, and I think at one point he even called Starmer a loser. And so I think that, King Charles, although the British monarch is typically not supposed to publicly engage in diplomacy, I think behind the scenes, they have a very good relationship. Trump loves the monarchy. They seem to have a good relationship, the two of them. And I'm sure there'll be some discussion of it as Charles tries to repair the relationship. And it was interesting. I heard an interesting statistic that Charles has been here. This is like his 19th visit, but I believe this is his first visit as king. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah, interesting. All right. And if you can't hear it all, we have lip readers now that will read those public appearances. I don't know if you saw the one yesterday when he met the king and Camilla at on the red carpet. I guess one of the British outlets lip reader was able to. President, I guess, according to her, talked about Saturday night and how real and scary that was, obviously, and then
sure.
He brought up Putin to the king, and the king's like, "We'll talk about him later, Putin. We'll talk about him later." Can you imagine the conversation with a king like that? Who's been around so long, and then, of course, even though he's symbolic and the president of the United States, hey, Putin's he's really being a thorn here. He wants war, not peace. We'll talk about it later, Mr. President.
Yeah, well, King Charles likes to he likes to engage in these kinds of trips, and he's been very active on climate change, but other issues as well.
And then I'm sure the president wanted to show him the new ballroom. All right, thank you.
Yep. Sure thing, Jack. Thanks.
All right, a lot going on. Top of the 10 o'clock, Mark Vargas will do a quick check-in. And he's interesting because he's done the media thing. He's also been close to the intelligence community to get his take on this blockade. And we're going to talk to our friends at Eversource, one of our great partners and sponsors. They're doing some great cultural stuff. Eversource, yes, Eversource. And then a little bit later on, J-Dog Mike Cody, New Hampshire Business Review, actually has a medical situation, so we're going to sub and switch Mike Cody with Michael Graham, I believe. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of H. 11 o'clock, Rory O'Neill. We got a full show for you. And then our podcast, available at thepulseofanh.com later today. Contact Politics with Jack Heath or Brad Card and Jack Heath. Our podcast today features a senior member of the United States Secret Service and his career, and talking about Secret Service. Not only Saturday night, the White House Correspondents' Dinner. By the way, really good stuff we've already had on this morning. John Decker, our White House correspondent, was talking about being there Saturday night, hearing the 4 or 5 shots, not knowing what was happening. But Contact Politics this afternoon. Secret Service, our guest, back on the Pulse of an H in a moment.